There is a great saying. When it comes to the future, there are three types of people: those who let it happen, those who make it happen, and those who wonder what happened. I know most of you personally, and I'm really happy to say that people gathered here this morning are those who are making the future happen, at least try to make the future happen. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, it is a privilege to me to be part of the opening, and with great pleasure I would like to invite Her Excellency Dalia Grybauskaitė, the President of Lithuanian Republic, to open the conference and welcome us all gathered here.
So, good morning, everybody. Everything looks nice, especially here. So, I'm very happy that we're starting from you. Our 2 days hard work, very important work, but we're starting from civil society. So, ladies and gentlemen, since its establishment in the 1950s, the European Union has become a union of values, and this basically differs the European Union from any other economic or trade pact worldwide. The Europeans never question such things as human rights, free elections, and free media, the rule of law and pluralistic society. They are the fundamentals on which relations of people and cooperation of member states are based. It is unquestionable. The values and principles I am mentioning here would not be so clear and distinct without developing active societies. People, not governments, are the main actors keeping societies functioning. A state is void without its citizens and their interests. Citizens build a state. Moreover, the state will be strong only if civil societies exist. And why civil society should speak out, then governments hesitate. To be active and responsible, tolerant but not ignorant, are the key features of such society. Communication but not random contacts connect people. And the European Union member states are confident in promoting these values. Commitment for people's prosperity and responsibility for others, they extend across the borders. And Europeans do feel responsible for their neighbors also. Why the Eastern Partnership offers a variety of cooperation instruments. Apart from trade agreements, we enhance cooperation in people's mobility, transport, border management, environmental protection, and many other areas. But people-to-people interaction is of most importance, especially among the young. For example, the Erasmus Plus program starts in January 2014, offering a new potential for youth from the Eastern Partners countries. The European Union enters into a phase of implementing concrete measures rather than continuing negotiations. However, Eastern European countries still face challenges regarding the creation of full-functioning civil societies. The road towards a vibrant society takes a long time and sometimes faces setbacks as well. For my own country, it took years to overcome an outdated mentality, which we had also, and go through a change. Why I encourage the partners continuing to work on reforms, to set up well-established, functioning and consolidated democratic systems. I call on civil societies to have a powerful voice if governments act irresponsibly. For this purpose, I am happy to see here many distinguished guests from the European Union member states, institutions, and our partners' countries, as well as representatives from the academia, think tanks, and non-governmental organizations. Everybody has gathered here and is ready to discuss a future agenda for civil society, for European civil society, for our partners' civil society. So I'm very happy to welcome you here from early morning in Vilnius and wish you a fruitful, resultative, and useful for everybody discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Now, for the welcome address, I would like to invite a person who is really well known in the civil society circles, a person who is devoting much of his time and efforts to the civil society development in Eastern Partnership countries. Commissioner Füle, I'm inviting you to address our conference participants.
Very good morning, Madam President. It's always a pleasure returning to Vilnius and Lithuania after I have spent 2 years of my diplomatic career here and fall in love with the country, and with the people. Madam President, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate this opportunity extended by the Lithuanian presidency to address today's Civil Society Forum and Civil Society Conference. My intention this morning is to review where we stand in our partnership on the eve of the Eastern Partnership Summit and where we intend to go in the near future together with our neighbors in Eastern Europe. Let me underline at the outset that the Eastern Partnership is a joint policy of the European Union and its Eastern European partners. It is about developing democracy, promoting human rights, the rule of law, and good governance. We aim for an Eastern Partnership where free and fair elections are taken for granted, where people feel that they have a say in who governs them, where governments respect the will of the people as well as the rule of law, where criminal justice is free of politics, and where political prisoners are a thing of the past. The partnership is also about making it easier for business to trade and invest, and for researchers and students to work together and embark on joint projects. It is about allowing people to move and meet. This is why mobility of citizens and the objective of visa liberalization are such important parts of our policy. In fact, only yesterday, the Commission proposed to allow visa-free travel to the Schengen area for Moldovan citizens holding a biometric passport based on the successful implementation by Moldovan authorities of all benchmarks set out in the Visa Liberalization Action Plan. This proposal will now be discussed by the European Parliament and the Council. So congratulations to Moldova. To achieve the objectives of the partnership, several partner countries have taken the road to reform. There are no shortcuts on this road. So from the beginning, we have differentiated between our partners, depending on how close they wish to get to the European Union and how committed they are to reform. We don't discriminate. Our partnership is inclusive and based on joint ownership. The package of economic reforms contained in the association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade area is tried and tested and has delivered economic benefits for every country that has signed a free trade agreement with the European Union in the past. And in the case of deep and comprehensive FTAs, the approximation towards the European Union, its rules and standards will ensure that citizens share even greater benefits of better quality products and services. Before looking ahead to the road to Riga, let me say a few words about the decision of the Ukrainian government to suspend the progress of preparations for signature of the association agreement. I regret this decision. It was a unique opportunity to reverse the discouraging trend of decreasing foreign direct investment in Ukraine and to give momentum to negotiations with the IMF on a new standby arrangement. Many of the new opportunities for modernization and investment that the association agreement would have brought for Ukraine and its citizens will now be delayed. Nevertheless, we remain firm in our commitment to bring European Union-Ukraine relations to a new level. The European Union will be ready to resume the preparations for the signature of the association agreement as soon as Ukraine is ready to resume its path towards political association and economic integration with the European Union for the benefit of its citizens, citizens that have again shown in these last days that they fully understand and embrace the historic nature of European associations. Dear colleagues, looking to the future, I see 5 challenges ahead on the road from this Eastern Partnership Summit to the one in Riga in 2015. First, supporting partner countries in their steps leading to implementation of association agreement. With their far-reaching objectives of comprehensive political, economic, and social modernization, significant political will from the partner countries will be needed to drive through the necessary reforms for the benefits of the citizens. And the focus will be, of course, on the independence of the judiciary and on the fight by authorities against corruption. And I wish to stress here the important role of civil society in encouraging reform and monitoring action of governments in this area. The second challenge is ensuring the greater differentiation in our bilateral relations, coupled with our desire to keep the partnership as inclusive as possible to accommodate those Eastern European partner countries that reform at a slower pace. Third, we need to respond to the Eastern European citizens' desire for enhanced mobility. Fourth, it will be important that further economic integration proceeds to reform inefficient economic sectors unable to compete on the global marketplace. And fifth, last but not least, engagement with the civil society will have to continue to be strengthened to accompany and move forward political and economic reforms. And if I'm being asked what would be the deliverables and actually the success stories of the Eastern Partnership, my imminent response would be the engagement with the citizens of those countries, the engagement with the civil society, strengthening the capacity of the civil society, engaging them not only in dialogue with us, but with the support through that dialogue, involve them in the reform process in those countries, in the Eastern Partnership countries. The Civil Society Forum, its structure, the national platforms, has been developed into a mighty instrument of transformation of the Eastern European partners. Ladies and gentlemen, this is all about creating the conditions that will unlock and fulfill the potential for growth, enterprise, and creativity of citizens in Eastern Europe. This is what really counts and what we have worked to achieve together since the adoption of the Prague Declaration in May 2009. And I wish you a successful conference. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Commissioner. And now I would like to invite to the stage a person of high international reputation and a person who had an extremely busy year. I believe all of us were following your efforts in Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Pat Cox, former President of the European Parliament.
Madam President, Commissioner, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a really great privilege for me to be here today, and I would like to say on behalf of President Kwasniewski and myself how deeply grateful and honoured we are to be invited to address this event on the eve of the Eastern Partnership Summit meeting. It's also an opportunity for me, Madam President, through you, to congratulate your colleagues in government in Lithuania for a very impressive first presidency of the European Union, which is a great tribute to the capacity of this state to lead affairs, and we wish you well in the coming period in United Nations also. The Eastern Partnership process has been well described by Madam President and by the Commissioner. It is about a pathway to modernisation. It is about developing rules-based democracy. It is about offering the opportunity for consistent development of sustainable prosperity. For those of you from civil society who might wonder in a practical sense, what does it mean for someone on the ground? Let me tell you to go to one source, a statistical source, which is not propaganda and which is produced on an annual basis by the United Nations, the Human Development Index. And there you will see indices of all sorts of things to do with our lives, our education, our health service, and so on. Let me pick for you just 3 areas. I'm not going to go into statistics, but they illustrate very well the power of modernization and reform, of transformation. When a child is born, what are its chances of survival? This is measured by our infant mortality statistics. After surviving the first year, what are the years of longevity? How long can you look forward to, on average, in your life? And broadly speaking, although there are many criticisms and good criticisms of whether GDP as a statistic is a good measure of welfare, it's a quick index of places being better off or worse off economically. Let me tell you that in the period since the collapse of the Berlin Wall, with all of the engagement of the European Union with the states of Central Eastern Europe and potentially with the states of the Eastern Partnership, the true measure of transformation is revealed in the Human Development Index data. If I took 2 states, Poland and Ukraine, they started with a rough equality in the period to which I refer. Today, infant mortality in Poland is radically lower than in Ukraine. Longevity in Poland is 8.6 years longer on average than Ukraine. And income per capita in Poland is more than 3 times what it is in Ukraine. This is not just because everyone in Poland is a genius and everyone in Ukraine is not. It's about structures, it's about methods, it's about process, it's about transformation. And the offer of the European Union in the Eastern Partnership is the offer to pave the way to transformation. We know, of course, that history is not a paved road. We know it looking backwards as being almost linear, but looking forwards, it's hard sometimes to recognize where it takes us next. I think if we look at what is on offer in the Eastern Partnership, and it's wonderful to see, for example, today's announcement of the prospect of visa-free travel for Moldovans, a prospect also open to all those partner states who fulfill the necessary conditions. This is not about rhetoric, it is not about politics, it is about policy and its tangible delivery. You deliver, you gain. And it is a simple, open, transparent and honest contract on behalf of European Union, and it is an offer extended to all of the states of the Eastern Partnership. I think it's important also to reflect, following some of the rhetoric in recent days that has emerged from Kiev, that the partnership process is a long-term engagement, but it is not a bidding auction. It is not an auction where the highest bidder wins. It never was about bidding and putting money on the table, although assistance and money on the table has always been an integral part of the partnership process. And in this regard, the European Union and the international financial institutions will be reliable strategic partners for those in the partnership states who in their turn offer reliable and strategic partnership to Europe itself. Why am I here today? Well, of course I'm here because I was invited, but I guess I'm here specifically because I've had the privilege with President Kwasniewski to have been invited in the summer of 2012 to engage in a mission to Ukraine. That mission, in some respects, with the agreement of the government and the opposition and the European institutions, expanded its horizon over the period of the life of the mission. We made our 27th mission visit last week. We have fully worked 75 days inside Ukraine and probably as many outside on this mission. We met tête-à-tête with President Yanukovych on 18 occasions, almost 40 hours of meetings. Tête-à-tête with Prime Minister Azarov on 25 occasions. And tête-à-tête with Mrs. Yulia Tymoshenko, who yesterday celebrated her birthday, and I send from here our birthday wishes to her on your behalf and on behalf of my mission. This was an extraordinarily deep, lengthy process. I want to tell you that 8 days ago, with President Kwasniewski, we went to Bankova to meet the President. We sat in his office about 11:15 or so that morning, and we spent about 2 hours with him. It was the last meeting of 18. It was the first meeting at which the proposition of suspension or timeout was mentioned. And of course it was disappointing, because coming so late, it is difficult to retrieve. We went the next day to Prime Minister Azarov for our 25th meeting. And at the first meeting of 25, we learned of the suspension now being a fact of government public policy. So here today, and we're not here at Civil Society Forum to do all the high politics or the geopolitics of this engagement. But one thing should be made very clear, that many citizens in Ukraine, measured by reputable public opinion polling, and many citizens by their own animation in their streets in cities right across the country in the past week, and most especially young Ukraine, East or West young Ukraine, want to embrace the partnership as the stepping stone to their future. And we owe it to them to keep the door open, to keep the hope alive, and to keep the prospect that what they wish to achieve, they can achieve. How and when it will be done now needs reflection and new work. There is no doubt that there was severe pressure from Russia on Ukraine in recent months, and there's no doubt that this has played some role in the choice that has been made. Whether it should bear the entire burden of explanation of the choice is debatable, but it certainly has been a factor. I agree with the statement issued in recent days by President Van Rompuy and President Barroso, which disapproved of recent Russian action. And I think it is important that that statement was made. The European Union fully respects the sovereignty of each partner state and fully respects the sovereignty of Ukraine. And Ukraine as a sovereign state has every right in its sovereignty to say yes or no or maybe. This is the nature of sovereign choice. I wonder sometimes when I see the extent of the targeted interference of recent months from Russia, particularly with enterprises in southern and eastern Ukraine, to what extent not just independence is respected, but more particularly sovereignty. It would be a great pity if free nations found themselves independent, but in terms of the exercise of their sovereignty, unfree. This is not an acceptable condition in contemporary Europe. It is now for high politics to pick up the elements of this engagement and to move it forward. But to all those people that Kwasniewski and myself met in the street, and we were not often in the street because we were mostly at meetings, or in courtrooms, or in prison cells, or in hospital wards, doing our work. But where we met people in the street, especially young people, the most touching thing was when they spontaneously stopped us to thank us for what they thought we were doing for their country, the privilege which we had to help to do something. And we owe them a duty of care and a duty of attention that their aspirations can and should be achieved. And that is why, whatever the detail that may emerge from this summit, the message must be really clear. Europe is open for business with its partners. We have not changed. We hope you have not changed. Thank you.
Dear guests of the opening panel, dear participants, it is a great honor for me to announce that Civil Society Conference has received a special address of the U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry. I would like to invite the U.S. Ambassador to Lithuania, Deborah McCarthy, to read out the special address.
Good morning. Before I read the Secretary's letter, I would like to congratulate those who've organized the Civil Society Forum, and most particularly, Madam President, to you and your government for having done a tremendous job and exercised a lot of leadership, tremendous leadership in the EU presidency. And I join Mr. Cox in also looking forward to your leadership in the Security Council. The Secretary of State will be returning to Europe next week, and amongst his stops, he will be going to Moldova. I will now read the letter that he has addressed to all the participants in the Civil Society Conference. I would like to thank Lithuania for organizing this conference under its European Union presidency as a means to advance civil society in the Eastern Partnership countries. I would also like to express my deep appreciation to those participating in this conference, especially the citizens leading the charge to expand opportunity, to correct injustices, and to shape democratic futures in your countries. Human progress has always been propelled by what happens in civil society, by citizens pushing their leaders for a society that is more just and equitable, and where the rights and dignity of all people are respected. As President Obama stated at the Civil Society Roundtable in New York this past September, in the United States, civil society has been the catalyst for virtually every major advance that we have made: the abolition of slavery, the advancement of civil rights, the increased safety of workers, and the protection of our environment. Every day in the 6 countries of the Eastern Partnership, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Georgia, Moldova, and Ukraine, ordinary citizens are playing a critical role in moving their societies towards international norms enshrined in UN and OSCE commitments for human rights and democratic values. While there has been progress on the path of democratic reform in most of your countries, serious challenges remain with regards to freedom of speech and the media, rule of law, and accountability. Yet civil society groups fight on with deep commitment and also with often self-sacrifice, holding their governments accountable, shining a light on murky areas of corruption, and ensuring respect for the rights of every citizen, regardless of race, ethnicity, religion, gender, or sexual orientation. The United States celebrates the critical work being done by civil society to promote the core values of democracy, rule of law, and respect for human rights. You have my best wishes and full support for your endeavors. John F. Kerry, Secretary of State.
Dear distinguished guests of the opening panel, thank you very much for your welcome addresses. And on behalf of all participants, I would like to thank you for your time spent with us. We appreciate your presence here very much. Now I would like to announce a short break. Please remain in your seats.